Well, hello there, and thanks for joining me today on episode number 287 with Bill Price. Bill spent a very long time with my good friend Jonathan Resnick at Barbizon, and so we talked a whole bunch about that. We talked about living in a tiny little town called Havre de Grace, interesting name, and he told me all about that town. He told me about a very long and successful career, and he seems to think he's retiring. So let's see if that comes true. So please enjoy episode number 287 with Bill Price. And please like, subscribe, share these podcasts. I appreciate it. It's the only way that we grow the podcast. So thank you very much and enjoy. Hello and welcome to episode number 287. Today's podcast is brought to you by ACT Entertainment, North America's leading supplier of the entertainment industry's principal products to professionals across 6 different end markets, including professional lighting, fixtures, and lighting control equipment, audio, video, fiber, and power distribution, cables, connectivity, metalwork, custom manufacturing, and design. With ACT Entertainment, you get the industry's top performance products, as well as service education and engineering support to bring every entertainment professional concept to reality. Visit their website today at actentertainment.com. And today's podcast is also brought to you by Ultimate Support Systems, part of ACT Entertainment. For over 45 years, Ultimate Support has provided musicians with unique support solutions that are crafted with unparalleled innovation and quality. Ultimate Support has always been determined to invent, design, and manufacture the smartest support solutions and music accessories in the industry. And that commitment to innovation continues to this day. Be sure to visit ultimatesupport.com, where you can learn all about their solutions for content creators, touring musicians, recording studios, and more. From acoustic treatment to best-in-class speaker stands, Ultimate Support has premium accessories that you can count on. Welcome back, and thanks for joining me again today on 287, which was interesting. One of my son Jeremy's racing numbers. His number was always 87. Those of you who have followed him will know that. But as he moved up the ranks, there were different classes where you had to have a 1 at the beginning of your number, and it had to be a 3-digit number, or a 2, or a 4, or a 7, or whatever, especially in karting. And so in karting for a couple of years, his number was 287, and he won a lot of races in number 287. That was in the junior ranks. So episode 286 last week was crazy. It was a full-on ambush. And, you know, these guys are my really great friends. I was so excited about getting them on a podcast to really talk about their insights on what's going to happen in 2025, plus some of the sort of downside of 2024, what they thought about the year, how they thought things went, etc., maybe what some of the trends might be going forward. And so I was pretty excited about having that conversation. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, John Featherstone goes into this whole thing about, you know, this is your life, Marcel. And I'm so appreciative of these guys, you know, just amazing guys to think of me that way and to do something so weirdly special. And go ahead and check out number 286 if you want to see me completely sort of out of my place and out of control and, you know, being dragged around by a leash by these guys. It was fun and very appreciated. And I hope you like my story too, because it's a wild one. We just basically scratched the surface, but it's a nutty story for sure. So in AI, my favorite topic again, Sam Altman and Microsoft, as you know, probably, maybe you don't know, but Microsoft has invested lots and lots of billions of dollars in OpenAI, and is very partnered in and dug in pretty hard on helping Sam Altman and OpenAI to not only get to AGI, but get to AGI and beyond. And one of the things that they've started talking about is the fact that it's about profit now, that Microsoft's president or CEO or whatever has come out and said that he believes that with not only AGI, but even beyond AGI, that you will be able to generate more than $100 billion in profits. And so right now, OpenAI, I don't even think is expected to be profitable until, if I remember correctly, 2029. So they're losing a lot of money. It's very expensive to build these AI models and to train them. And so, they're losing money. They're going to continue losing money for a while. But on the topic of switching from a not-for-profit to a for-profit company, which is when Elon split with them, because I don't know if you know this, but Elon was one of the co-founders of OpenAI. It was meant to be an open source free software platform that was not for profit. And obviously it's changed direction. And so Elon has sued OpenAI because of this and for other reasons, I guess. And I read recently that someone who's known as kind of the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, opposes this shift to a focus on profits, and is also, a little peeved at the fact that they took so many prior tax benefits as from being a not-for-profit company, and also just, the complexities involved in AI, the social issues, the all sorts of very sensitive issues. He just doesn't think that the focus should be 100% on profits. So he's joining Elon, supporting Elon in his lawsuit. So that's an interesting wrinkle or development. It's going to kind of be Elon against Sam Altman and OpenAI for a number of years yet, I think. But meanwhile, it's going to continue on. And so while AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is basically what everyone says is when it gets to the point where it's as smart as a human, as a person that you would hire off the street to come in and do something. AGI has general intelligence. It's able to do, most jobs quite well. And they keep changing the levels, whether it's at a third-year accomplice or a fourth-year whatever, or, someone with a college degree at some point. So they're going to keep moving that up. But there's a new term being tossed around, which isn't that new. But Sam Altman has basically come out and said that we already know how to get to AGI. We're already on our way. We're probably going to start hitting AGI very soon, 25, 26. We're already working towards superintelligence, AI superintelligence, which is AI that is expected to be sort of like 10 times as smart as the world's greatest geniuses today. So if you look at an Elon Musk, for example, maybe 15 times the smarts of Elon Musk in an AI tool. And so that's when it gets pretty crazy. That's when you start scratching your head and going, why would I want a human in this role when I've got AI that can do it 20 times better potentially, and never takes a day off, never calls in sick, doesn't take smoke breaks. There's no HR issues where they're, saying inappropriate words to the person in the next cubicle or whatever. So it is getting interesting, folks. And I will say that, this year, and this came out of Sam Altman as well, but I've been saying it as well, and I think I actually said it in my prediction on last week's episode also, is that I believe starting this year, you're going to start seeing AI agents sitting among your team. So your team is going to be blended. And I don't mean blended from a cultural standpoint or a gender or religious standpoint. I mean blended from a standpoint of human and non-human agents. And so agents, if you don't know, it's just really a word for an AI tool that's specific to a function or a task. And so you'll have marketing agents, sales agents, customer service agents, etc., code writing agents. And so it's AI that is created specifically to do a task or a genre of tasks. And so I will tell you that my business is already operating with agents. And going forward, we're probably going to start seeing sort of like one agent for every 3 staff members, maybe 4 staff members. So we're still going to have more people than agents. Maybe in the future that might be down to 1 to 1 or 1 to 2 or something like that. And that doesn't mean it's replacing people. It just means that those agents are going to make our people more efficient, so we don't have to add more people. And so is it taking jobs away from humans? Certainly it is. I can't lie and say that none of our companies out there are going to lose jobs to AI. We're all going to lose jobs to AI. I have to become smarter as a CEO, or I'm going to lose my job to an AI CEO. Joe Rogan often talks about an AI president, which, it's not completely out of the realm of possibilities. Talk about making decisions based on the biggest data set that you can, and that's what it's all about, is making better decisions based on better data. And so, the other thing about having these AI agents is that for the most part, they're doing relatively simple, relatively mundane things that we as humans don't necessarily want to do or don't have the time to do or whatever it is. But also some more complex tasks like data management, analysis, managing really large, complicated spreadsheets sometimes and pulling out information, telling you what's in those spreadsheets and things. So, and right now, one of the AI agents that we have is a customer service agent called GearBot, which is basically our chat bot. When you come to our site, to GearSource, and you talk to GearSource, you're talking to a bot. And then if the bot can't answer, it'll say, would you like a live human? And you'll say yes. And you can also say, give me a live agent at any time throughout the chat, and you can get rid of it. But if you're just saying, hey, how do I recover my password? How do I get into my account? How do I open an account? How do I add a listing? How do I make a payment? How do I do all of these relatively simple things? It'll be your fastest route to a perfect answer. It'll be faster than any of my staff, and certainly faster than me, who will say, I don't know how to do all those things. So it's working pretty well. Some people have experienced frustration because they keep asking it the same question and it says, I don't understand. But, that's how it's meant to respond. And by the way, it's also a learning bot. So we're constantly feeding it more information. You're feeding it more information with your conversations. It's using that information to become smarter next time. And so a year from now, you won't even recognize that bot. That bot will be smarter than anybody on my staff, myself included. So it's a good thing. And we're pretty excited about where it's going for our platform. And some of the things that we're working on that I won't tell you about are really exciting and are going to really sort of change the world when it comes to buying or renting product, cross-renting product. And more on that later. And so I like to share with you tools that I'm using, because a lot of people call me and ask, because they think of me as some sort of an AI expert. I'm not an expert. I'm more of a junkie than an expert. I like using this stuff. I like researching it. I like finding new tools that either simplify or improve on or make more efficient some of the things that I'm already doing. So one of the things that for me is a real keeper, it's something I use absolutely every day, all day, is Perplexity. I use Perplexity for search over Google. So I don't use Google search anymore. I now use Perplexity for search. And for simple, really, like if I'm looking for where to have lunch today, I'll still use Google. For some things I'll still use Google, but for, I would say, eight searches out of 10 now are on Perplexity. It's much more multi-source. It'll tell you what the sources are for that information. It's not advertising based, so you don't have to sit and dig through a bunch of ads to find the real answers. They don't track you, and they are using your information to teach the models, but they're not actually tracking you and selling your information for ads and stuff, so that's good. And I just like the answers. I think they're much more complete answers, and it's much better. Another tool I like to use is Grok, which is Elon Musk's AI. And why do I like it? It's just a little bit more fun than ChatGPT. So sometimes If I'm writing a blog and I want to use AI to help me, by the way, I don't use AI blogs, so don't get me wrong. I'm not just having AI do my job for me, but sometimes I might have it create the framework, or I might have it go over my framework and maybe add some color to it a little bit or something. But I just like the way Grok writes more than I like the way ChatGPT writes. I also like some of the images from Grok better than ChatGPT. There's just some things that it does better. And, one of the cool things that you can do on Grok now is you can scan, like if you've just recently gone for blood work at the doctor, you can scan your blood work or your scans, your MRI scans, or any of that kind of medical information. You can scan it in and say, explain this to me like I'm a seventh grader. And it'll tell you exactly what's going on. What you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you might do, what might have happened, all kinds of different things. I can tell you it's better than most doctors that I've been to. Family practitioners, I'm not picking on you, but I think Grok and ChatGPT and all sorts of other AI tools are doing a better job than you are right now. And so, yep, I use Grok quite often. Another thing is ChatGPT, and some of you might like it for this reason, but ChatGPT is biased and it is censoring things. So my girlfriend is British. I think many of you know that. And the other day I was asking her, did you hear all this crazy stuff that's going on in England with all the rape? And she said, what do you mean rape? And I said, well, it seems like the government are covering up for the fact that many, not just women, but children are being raped, like hundreds of thousands of people. There's so many reported and unreported cases of rape going on in England right now. And then she made me start questioning whether or not it was real, because she was like, well, why haven't I heard about this? And, basically because it's not all over mainstream media, number one. So I went into ChatGPT and it said, sorry, that's a controversial topic, or it's a, it just wouldn't tell me. It basically said, I'm sorry, but I won't talk to you about that. So I went on Grok, and Grok gave me the scoop, and it gave it to me from multiple sources, completely unbiased. It wasn't right wing, left wing, any wing. It was just straight information, and it told me the sources that information came from. What more could you want? That to me is the perfect answer. And so that really surprised me that ChatGPT was still a little bit biased like that. And then finally, one of the tools that I literally probably use every day, it's crazy, but you can take a paragraph of information, a page of information, a book of information, or just a few bullet points, and put it into this napkin.ai. And what it will spit out is like a little graph, a chart, a flow chart. It'll basically give you like 20 different types of images that will display that information in a very sensible way. And really good looking, and great just to grab it and throw it into a slide deck, or if you're doing your school homework or whatever it is. It's just a really great way to display information in a little graph that probably used to take you a couple of hours to create. Now you can create it in a couple of minutes, and then you can do all kinds of modifying and editing to it. And super easy to use. It's 100% free of charge. And the only downside is it's only desktop right now. It's not available on mobile. And you have to go to napkin.ai and sign up for it. You got to get invited. You'll get an invite right away. And fantastic tool. I love it. I've shared it with a bunch of people. They all love it. And again, I use it practically every day. Anytime I'm trying to explain something to people, I put it in a simple little diagram and they get it right away. Really, really great app. So moving on, today's guest is Bill Price. Bill is a consultant of entertainment technology and a freelance designer, lighting designer, director, set designer, theatrical and dance productions. He has been active in the entertainment industry for over 40 years. And most recently, Bill was vice president for AKT3, the Mid-Atlantic rep for lighting, rigging, and draperies for entertainment. He's also the past chair and founder of Havre de Grace Arts Collective, the immediate past chair of United States Institute of Theater and Technology, Chesapeake section, and former chair of USITT eSET Council, not sure what that is, an education organization of the entertainment industry. Bill has come highly recommended by Bill Groener to come on the podcast. So please welcome Bill Price to the show. Bill, hello. How are you?
I'm great. And as I was saying, that's where I found my pants.
Exactly.
Yep.
Never had that one before. You got me.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, we were just having a great off-air conversation about a mutual friend, Jonathan Resnick. God rest his soul.
God rest his soul.
And, I've talked about him before on the podcast, but just a guy who was a really great friend of mine for a long time and a really good business friend. Like when you are an entrepreneur, you often feel like you're on an island by yourself and nobody else understands what it's like to live on that island. And for the most part, that's sort of true. Like you can talk to accountants and lawyers and they think they know, but they don't know. Like nobody knows except another entrepreneur. True. And so I had a small circle of people that I would talk to. And, oftentimes Jonathan and I would just bitch about PRG for an hour, or we'd
only an hour.
Sometimes two. It just depended what they did that week. But we'd talk about what's going on in the industry, what's happening with pricing, what's happening with whatever it was. But we'd talk like we never had an NDA, but we would talk extremely transparently and openly about our own businesses, about other businesses, about people sometimes. And I trusted him implicitly that it was never going to come back on me, and he was the same with me. And
so I shouldn't tell you about the time that you went. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I would believe that
Nothing.
from a lot of people, but not from Jonathan.
No.
So I'll tell you a funny story though that happened one time, because I used to, every time I came to New York, I always made a point of stopping by Barbizon and going out to lunch with Jonathan, or at least sitting and talking for an hour in his office. And so I was on my way to a meeting with somebody, a designer or something, and I had 45 minutes to kill, I think. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to swing by Barbizon and just see if Jonathan's around. And so I jump out of the taxi, and I'm out of the taxi. I got my suitcase in one hand and my backpack in the other hand, and I did the pocket check for my phone. And I left it in the taxi, and I turn around, and just as I turn around, for one moment, that road in front of Barbizon is clear, and this guy was able to drive away, right? And so I'm trying to call the taxi company. I'm trying to call, the New York Taxi Commission. I'm trying to, because the last thing on earth you want to lose is your cell phone. And back then it was probably a little tougher to replace one than it is today, where it's all in the cloud and you just hook up a new phone and boom, it's got all your stuff in it, right? So finally I'm like, well, why don't I just call my phone? Maybe he'll answer it. And I called it about 10 times. And on the 10th time he answered it. And I said, can you bring it back to me? I'll give you some cash. And he goes, how much?
Really?
And I said, $50. And he goes, 100. And I'm thinking, you MFer. But, truth be told, I would have paid 200.
Sure.
And so I said, fine. I wasn't happy about it, but I was thinking, and he's like, hey, I've already gone over the bridge. I need $100. Okay. And so, Resnick was laughing at me, of course. And the guy came back with my phone, and I gladly gave him $100, and he went on his way. So anyways,
welcome to New York.
Yeah. You were there quite a long time, right? You were at Barbizon, I think, in different roles.
I started Barbizon in 2001 and left in 2016. Is that right? Oh, no. Wait a minute. That's when I was systems manager. I started Barbizon in 1994.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 23 years is what I calculated out.
So you started first, like, what, as a systems guy?
Well, so systems division back when I started was like 6 guys. It was like Rick Laudenberg, Bill Kapp, Steve Cullifer, Ed Hyatt, and Steve Gambino, God rest his soul. And I think that was it. And
Wasn't Gebby there yet?
No. Gebby's a youngster by comparison.
Yeah.
And that was it. And so I was hired actually to be a systems guy, but back then Barbizon really didn't know what systems was about. They were overinflated box goods guys. And really, systems for Barbizon back then was a mean to sell more lamps. If we'll sell all these lighting fixtures to a studio or to whomever, you know what? Then they're going to need lamps.
Yeah.
And so that was really what it was about. But I remember we were in Las Vegas and we were sitting in a restaurant, all of us, and we were reinventing Barbizon, getting more drunk and more boisterous. And you can hear Jonathan over our right-hand corner saying, bathroom, bathroom, think of the bathroom.
Yeah.
He used to always do these bathroom discussions about careful what you say in the bathroom because somebody's going to hear it. And then you're going, right, blah, blah, blah. So
was it during an LDI or something where the next table would probably be another lighting company?
It was our pre-show speech was, when you're out with folks, don't get drunk and don't, whatever you say. Anyway, and so I started actually out as a systems guy in the Washington office and did that for about, I don't know, 3 years. And back to Jonathan again, I was getting itchy feet and I really wanted to do more and help the company bigger and better. And he invented that I was going to be the Southeast Regional Manager for Barbizon, which meant that I helped with Charlotte because that was just starting up, and Atlanta, and that was up and running, and Florida, which was one of the granddaddies of all the Barbizons. And so I did that for a while. And
at that time, was Florida just Orlando, or was Miami open already too?
Actually, further back than that, it was West Palm.
Right, yeah,
and Miami.
Yeah.
So I think Hiram Perez started the Miami office,
right,
and West Palm was the headquarters of Barbizon, Florida. And then that eventually gravitated over to Miami. But and then after a while, we decided we were going to hire a director of systems because now there was maybe 10 other people. And we hired Tim Bachman, who's with Altman, I believe, on the left coast. And he lasted a little bit of time. And then we hired Mike Griffith, who had just left ETC and came to work for Barbizon. And then he left, and then I became the director of systems. But really, along the way, my impact on Barbizon, if anything were to be of significant, was the creation of the project management phenomena within Barbizon. Because again, we were just box goods guys.
Yeah.
And they really didn't understand the sales agenda for Barbizon. So they figured, well, yes, you're looking at those plans, et cetera, but can you also handle the customer at the counter?
Yeah.
It's a little tough. And then also when you sell systems, it was like a box goods system. So you sold a system, so now you're going to project management and you're going to go into the field, and it was a whole cradle to grave phenomenon. Somewhere along the line, actually, specifically, we were at a systems meeting in Boston, and there was a guy who did a presentation about being a project manager. And we were like, well, what's that thing? And it really resonated for me that if we had project managers, the salespeople who were really good salespeople could go on and continue to sell stuff and hand the job off to a person who could be the project manager.
That makes sense, yeah.
It does, doesn't it? That was heresy because that meant that person wasn't selling anything. And in Barbizon, you sold something always. That's how you made your money.
Right.
This person was strictly overhead. No, this can't work. Well, John Hottie, who was the general manager of Washington at the time, was all ears. And we did it. And we hired a project manager who actually was Tom Kennedy, who's now the owner of AKT3, an ETC representative of the Mid-Atlantic. And great guy, terrible project manager.
Yeah.
And yes, Tom, I did say that.
Well, at the time, was production arts like sort of the North Star?
Yes, I would say so. Yes, Steve Terry, I think, was still there. So yeah, production arts was the North Star, and they were the big kids, and they were doing it as I'm describing it. I wasn't aware of the intricacy, I should say, of the way PA handled themselves, but I just saw this guy doing project management and started it off at Barbizon, and it's grown ever since. So now
Yeah.
there's project managers, there are technicians, etc. And I think that's all what led them to where they are today, which is quite the behemoth in the systems world.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I remember, so Production Arts I think sold to PRG around like 97, 98 at the time,
Was there
something like
something
that.
else in there though? Because it seems like they were doing alphabet soup for a while. And PA to PRG to something else. I forget.
Yeah,
I
I don't
mean,
know. I
it's
don't
now PRG.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so at the time it was, I think Production Arts was meant to be sort of the that side of the business,
Right.
and light and sound design was the rock and roll side of the business, and
Right.
but that went away pretty quickly. Scenic, what was it called? What was that company called? Scenic something or other, his other company, Jerry's other company. um I can't even
Yeah.
remember.
I want to
But
say
yeah,
Scenic
that went away, and it
Technologies, but
just became PRG. And I mean, one of the things that's always been kind of sad and remarkable to me is how quickly Production Arts disappeared. You know, like how you've got this great company that really is the gold standard of the industry from a integration standpoint, I
hmm
guess, and just disappeared, like gone, completely gone.
well, I think there were a lot of people nipping at their heels.
Yeah,
And
true.
I think I
Barbizon
don't
being one
know
of
if
them.
this is accurate, but yeah, I definitely think so. I don't know if this is accurate, but I think when Steve Terry left and went to ETC, that he was like the underpinnings. It
Yeah,
seemed to me from
for
afar,
sure. Yeah,
looking
yeah,
in, that him going to ETC was pretty tough on them, if you will, in
yeah,
terms of talent, and they had a lot of talent. But
yeah,
I've even watched Barbizon over the years see other companies start hedging in on their territory and thinking, yeah, I could do that too. And some of them were quite successful
yeah.
at it and are now to this day. I call them baby Barbizons, but then I'm biased. But
Mhm.
doing systems integration has evolved, I think, a lot over the years. It's gotten more sophisticated. The technology's certainly got a lot more sophisticated.
Yeah.
And
Jobs have
having
gotten bigger,
jobs have gotten
a lot
bigger.
more video.
I remember I got a $51,000 job shortly after I started, and I was like, "Oh, wow, yeah,
This is
baby!
great.
Oh, look at
Yeah,
me! Oh, let it
yeah,
rain!" And that was,
yeah, yeah. Now the wire order is bigger than that. You
oh,
know.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. So, I
yeah,
mean, the industry has changed. I still think there's a lot of players, and some very good players. Some of them actually have decided to stop at sort of, we'll call it the second tier, like a high school level. Although it's $1 million job, it's still not a $10 million job. And I
yeah,
think that has to do with the financial wherewithal of a company to be able to bond it,
yeah.
to be able to have the talent for it. You really had to step up to plate.
Yeah,
But
it's a good point. Like I've seen a lot of small companies go after big jobs, and there's a reason that you're probably not supposed to do that, because when something goes wrong and you don't have the wherewithal, to take care of that problem or whatever, like when you're leaning entirely on the suppliers to provide
mhm,
you the credit to make it so that that job can even fly, and I know way too many companies who do that.
yeah, absolutely.
um, that's a
Leaning the
little bit
industry.
scary. One little thing goes wrong, and lawsuits are flying.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And
yeah,
there's no way out of it, effectively. I mean, you can file bankruptcy, but that's what it would be.
yeah,
I mean, you have the contract, everybody's expecting this is what's going to happen, and yeah, no, not so much. I
yeah,
remember when Chris Roberts was the CFO of Barbizon, and I would present him with $1 million job. He was like, how badly can we get hurt? Can we afford this? Because Barbizon was seven different companies, is that right? Each individual had its own incorporation. So there was Barbizon Delta, Barbizon
yeah,
Atlanta,
yeah.
Barbizon whatever, whatever.
I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah, and so the small company could really get crushed by a job going sideways.
yeah,
The mothership was okay, but you know, they weren't shuttling money around from one to the other per se to make
Yeah.
sure that everything was shored up. So it's funny how we had that dichotomy.
Well, and the other thing is, at least at the time, and I think still today, systems integration, the margins are generally so small
Yep.
because everyone is like, well, I can sell you ETC at cost minus 3%, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
3%, that's nothing.
Yeah.
I can do cost minus 6%, you know.
No.
I mean, we're so willing to throw away money when the buyer is a billion-dollar company, you
Yeah,
know, it's
right,
ridiculous.
exactly. Well, and you saw that happen with the Source 4. I mean, the Source
Oh,
4
yeah.
was
It
in the
became a
toilet
commodity.
a
Yeah.
month after it came out. People were selling it almost at cost. And we're
Yeah.
like, you idiots, why are you doing that? This is
Yeah.
such a unique product. You could be selling it almost
So
at
true.
list.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I got it. You know, and everybody wanted to play, as you say, a run to the bottom. And
Yeah.
It hurt the industry. And I think it still actually hurts the industry in many ways. Moving lights. That's another one.
Yeah.
You know, making 5 points on a moving light package, that's a good day.
Yeah, I mean, every end user knows what dealer cost is on every fixture, every console. You know, it's like try getting anywhere near retail for a MA3 console, you know?
Right.
And I mean, everyone knows what they can buy it for, and somebody will sell it to them for that just to keep their dealership or to be able to pay their bill at the end of the month or whatever it is,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So,
So I was the guy who called ETC and said, "Do you know what they sold that job at? Do you know? You
Yeah.
can't." And they would go, "Yeah, I'm really sorry. Click. We still got the order though, didn't we?" You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's getting crazier today. I had a conversation yesterday with someone. One of the problems today is that this direct-to-consumer model is a much bigger concern than dealers willing to sell at cost. Because, you know, by my calculations, probably in 2024, if I were to guess, call it in our range of the industry, if you mix together audio and lighting,
Yep.
I would say that on Amazon alone, there were probably $4, $5, $6 billion in sales last year
Yep.
on DTC products, and that's moving lights and consoles and whatever. And it's to me like this is a bigger concern. I wouldn't be as worried about whether or not the dealers are making their full markup. I'd be worried about, you know, whether or not there's going to be a market outside of DTC China, you know, because the fixtures are so cheap. And, you know, an end consumer, an end buyer, if it's an install, for example, it's going to become really hard to convince them that they'll sell more museum tickets if they buy a $10,000 moving light than if they buy a $2,000 or a $500 moving light.
Yep.
And just buy double the number of them so that you've got loads of spares for the next few years, and then just replace the system again.
Yep. You're absolutely right. And I was fighting that just before I left, but at ETC, asking them to do the map pricing. That you know, you cannot publish this any lower than X, and that meant everybody. And if you caught somebody, I'm the guy making that phone call saying, "Do you know that so and so posted this on Amazon at blah 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 blah?" And that worked out well. But there's still the whole online sales, which isn't direct to consumer, but it's pretty doggone close because they don't have necessarily bricks and mortar in a location that you're trying to sell in.
Yeah.
And so the argument was always made, go ahead, buy it from them. I'm glad it's cheaper. However, don't call me when it all goes sideways. And that has a lot of credibility in some instances, but no credibility in other instances.
Well, when it depends on the spread too. Like if you're talking about a 10 or 15% difference in price, sure. You know, my relationship with you, Bill, and your great support and everything, it's worth paying 15% more. When you're talking about 400% more, you know, now I'm going, Bill, are you okay? Like, what the hell? Why would I buy this stuff from you?
Because you love me.
Because you love me. So, yeah, I mean, I think that obviously the president that's coming in is going to make it a little more complicated with the tariffs and stuff.
Going to make me choke on my coffee.
And, you know, tariffs in some sense might work. In another sense, they won't. The other thing is companies are already moving their manufacturing out of China into Taiwan or into Indonesia or into Malaysia or Vietnam or whatever. And they'll continue doing that. And then they'll move to Mexico and then they'll move to wherever.
Yep.
So for a little while, we'll play chase the tariff game,
Yep.
and, but I mean, ultimately, it's a problem. I think it's a problem for every industry. It's a problem for the car industry. And, like, I don't know if you paid attention during COVID to all the Mike Strickland stuff that was being said, whether it was on my podcasts or elsewhere, about the fact that our industry is small and very separated, very segmented. And so, like, his classic line was the airline industry, the big industries were showing up at Congress with battleships, and our industry was showing up with 1,000 little canoes.
Yeah, right.
And, you don't have a voice at that point. And so when you're looking at, is this a big problem for the lighting business? Yes, it is. But the lighting business is a blip. It's nothing compared to the auto industry.
Right.
If the auto industry starts screaming, saying, hey, these electric cars coming in direct from China for $3,000 or $4,000 are disrupting our industry completely.
Right.
Now you got a problem, right?
Right.
So, and some countries just block it altogether. I don't know that that's the answer. I'm more of an open market kind of guy, but there does need to be some sort of balance or regulation when they're paying, $1 or 50 cents an hour for wages and we're paying $30 an hour for wages. You got to do something to offset that.
Yep.
And
I had two interesting conversations at LDI about this. One said, we know it's coming and we're banking and putting inventory in the U.S. that will help us erode the impact that might have. And building up their inventory. The other one said, yeah, I've talked to my compadres, wrong choice of words, I guess, but in China, and they're just going to absorb the tariff. They can do that within their margin and keep the price the same. So
depends what the tariff is, I think. If it's a 50 or 100% tariff, then you're going to run into some trouble on that. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an interesting watch. Again, I didn't see it coming as far as people buying moving lights, LED moving lights on Amazon.com or on Facebook. And I didn't see that coming, but it's happening in a really big way right now. Like rental companies are buying direct-to-consumer Chinese moving lights for $200-$300 that replace Martin lights that would have cost $3,000.
Right.
And they're just like, I buy a few extra spares and they work great. They're fine.
When I was Barbizon, we had a manufacturer that we were dealing with, and there was a lot of out-of-the-box failures. Mm-hmm. And yet we just would turn around, get the new one back again, and so it was almost a disposable commodity.
That's what they're doing.
I think that's what's going to happen more and more. So
yeah, it's sort of the Amazonification, because that's how Amazon works. They make so much money based on scale that, when we have to, that's why they've got such a liberal return policy. They don't care. Like, your product gets shipped back to Nowheresville and somebody buys containers of these returned products, and they don't know whether you sent back a box with a rock in it or a box with the I was going to say razor, but you don't shave. So
a little bit.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, they have margin built in to withstand that. And it's just a real disposable marketplace. And it's a little bit scary.
It is.
A little bit scary.
Don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah. Do you have thoughts on AI? My other favorite topic? Favorite controversial topic?
Yeah. I mean, considering we are in the performing arts, world where we like to think that a lot of our creativity is our creativity,
intellectual property.
Yeah. The fact that it can clone that off almost better than you can make it is very frightening. I suppose AI will come to live production in terms of, lighting and automation and all those kind of things. I haven't seen that crossover yet.
Yeah.
There still needs to be an LD or a human driving the production. Hopefully that doesn't change. But I know that downstream of that human, there's probably going to be a lot more AI interfacing going on. Um, I would be more concerned about those making content, um, actors, performers, voiceovers, uh, photographs, all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
than what we do in a live production. But
Yep.
again, that's only a small slice of what it is that's necessary
Yeah,
uh,
I agree
to
with
do
much of what
shows.
you just said. I think the downstream uh, tasks and jobs are probably more at immediate risk than the LD, the front of house engineer, the production manager, the director. Um, and it's going to be interesting to see how that all works out. I tend to be a cup is half full guy when it comes to AI. I use it every day. I use it a lot and I understand it really well. Part of it is I don't want to be in the dark. I don't want to be,
Right.
the boogeyman's coming. I don't want to
Yep.
be surprised by any of the technology that's coming. So I try to stay pretty cutting edge as far as my knowledge is with AI.
Yep.
And I've used it for betterment of my own company. I haven't let go of a single employee because of AI yet. Um, might I hire less employees in the future? 100%, I will. But the thing is, a business like mine is going to go away in the future if I don't adapt.
Agreed.
There's just going to be better, easier, more efficient ways to move product around than through some of these clunky companies. And so you're going to have to adapt to some of those things,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, I would definitely think things that inventory control and marketing and things like that that could be semi-automated are going to greatly benefit from AI. I wrote a grant application not long ago, and the response back was you needed to make this particular section sound more appealing, or whatever the adjective was. And I took everything that I wrote, stuck it into ChatGPT, and it came out. And I submitted it, and they said, "This is fantastic." And I was
Yeah,
like,
it's funny.
"That would be that machine over there that
Yeah,
did that."
yeah, that's
But
funny.
I mean,
Yeah,
as you say, it's a tool. It's a tool that you can use. If you use it, then you'll be okay with it. If you don't use it, you won't. I'll give you a simple analogy from a two-scene preset board to a computer board. I mean, there's light years of growth in between all of that, but I remember living through all that, the two-scene preset world, or however many scenes it was, and was feeling liberated as a designer when I had a computer board and I could make any changes I wanted to right up to showtime. Now,
yeah,
I didn't change necessarily the placement of the cues, but I kept working it and working it and working it and fearless that it was going to make the show look wacky.
right.
It's all those little subtleties within your cueing that you can work over and over again. Half a point here or a little brighter there.
Right.
And that
Yeah.
was a computer board, as opposed to somebody having now you got to move your fingers a little bit this way instead of that way, and there's no way they could have possibly done that. So
Yeah.
again, it's a tool. If you understand it, you can use it. You're going to be that much better off for it.
I
So
agree with you. And, again, I don't think it's something where it's like we have a choice whether we're going to use it or not, or we have a choice whether it's going to do things or not. So I listened to something this morning. Again, I'm a bit of a junkie when it comes to this technology. And I listened to something this
glad you
morning.
clarified that.
Yeah, I listened to something this morning where it was basically comparing artificial general intelligence, which is sort of the next major step, which is basically AI is sentient, meaning it can make itself smarter and it can just do a lot more stuff. Today, it's basically at sort of like a ninth or 10th grade level when it comes to writing and reading and all of those functions.
Well, that
But
just surpassed the majority of the population.
yeah, correct, correct. Yeah, you passed at least the audio guys. Um, and very soon it'll hit like people are predicting anywhere from 2025 to 2027 it'll hit what they're currently calling AGI, artificial general intelligence, but they're already looking at superintelligence. And the definition of artificial superintelligence is basically 10 times the smartest geniuses on Earth.
Oh my word.
And that's somewhere between 7 to 10 years by most people's speculation right now. And so we are absolutely going to be the idiots in the room very, very soon. I mean, that's coming quickly. Will it have feelings? Not necessarily. Will it, I mean, there's always going to be humans in the loop.
Sure.
But I think we determine what our role is in sort of the future world. We determine what our role is based on our knowledge and use of AI. And if we're just ignorant to it, or we're scared of it and we hide in the corner going, AI is bad, I don't want anything to do with it, the bus is going to run over you. And so that's how I kind of look at it.
Well, look at the internet. I mean, my mother, God rest her, she was all about knowing how to use email.
Yeah.
I used to get the IT support phone call every other day. My printer's not working. And it's like, okay, Mom. But my dad, who had worked with computers for many, many years, didn't want to use them at all. When he retired, he was like, I'm done. That's it.
Yeah.
Today, if you don't have an email, I don't care who you are, you're really missing out on a form of communication that virtually everybody is doing. I'll give you a quick analogy to that. We sent out invitations to a Christmas Eve party in the mail.
Oh, my goodness.
In the mail. And I got a phone call going, aren't you having a party? Yeah. Well, we're looking everywhere. We looked through our email, went through our text, went through our Facebook. We couldn't find it anywhere. I was like,
that's hilarious.
Mailed it to you. And they're like, oh, okay.
I would have been that person, by the way, Bill. Like, I open my mail every 10 days or something. Like, I don't often open mail because 99% of, like, all my bills are all done. All my bank statements are done. Anything important doesn't come through the mail for me.
I'm the same way. You're sending out cards. I thought it was a clever way of inserting something into the card.
You should have just faxed it, Bill. Maybe you should have faxed it.
An got the behind the scenes electronic Christmas card and been done with
there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, these days, you use Evite or whatever all those things are called, where
and they tell you who's coming, when they're coming, what are they bringing, all that stuff.
Yeah,
and I've used them, and it just was a momentary brain fart, I guess.
Well, you know what?
A sign of my times.
I still I've always had this love of like handwritten thank you cards, for example, and mailing them to people in the mail. But again, we're running into a delivery problem at this point because people, think of a big building, like who's delivering the mail in that big building? Yeah. What's the chance they're going to get it anytime soon? And if they do, what's the chance they're actually going to open it and read it? And so sometimes you're shooting yourself in the foot just by trying to be cool or unique or interesting. And instead you end up, just not getting delivered.
And if our new president has his way, the Postal Service is going to go away. Or is that Alon, the vice president? Oh, I mean, anyway, something weird is going to happen for sure. But, I mean, it does make those analog reaches to people a lot more precious when that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had a communication back and forth with a guy, and I was thrilled to see and read a note from him because I hadn't spoken to him in quite a while. So, it's still there.
So we kind of started at Barbizon, but I think your career started before that. So how do you get going in this wild and wonderful industry?
Wow. Well, I was bit by the theater bug when I was in high school. So I jumped into the performing arts part of it, and then I ended up doing some scenic painting, and then I went away to college to become a art teacher, and I spent all my time in the theater department, so I was flunking out of my regular school.
Oh my goodness.
And then I switched majors to theater arts and went from academic probation to the dean's list within one semester.
Wow.
And that was in Vermont, which it was a small school, 1,200 people. We literally doubled the size of the town when school was in session. But that size enabled me to do stuff in the theater that normally it would being done by the upperclassmen or somebody else more important. And I was the guy. I said, I want to do lighting. They were like, have at it.
Yeah.
And so I did. And a little funny story, if you can imagine this body stuffed into a tutu with a tank top and whatever. I was in a dance production, and I was this is the 70s. So I was
hang on a second. I gotta just breathe deeply for a moment. A tutu and a tank top.
well,
Did
not a
you really
tutu,
just say that, Bill?
not tutu. I mean, a tank top and tights. That's what. But
Oh
anyway,
my
a
goodness.
typical male dance garb. But at any
Yeah.
rate, it was a heap of garbage, is what I ended up in. Being on stage and looking up and watching this 8-inch Fresnel slowly dim, I thought that's really cool. I want to go do that. And again, small school, they were like, go for it, have at
Yeah.
it. So I was working on my 18 channel, 3600 watt, Strand Century 2 scene preset console with 8 by 9 axial ellipsoidals and 12 by 12 axial ellipsoidals. These are the size of a torpedo.
Yeah.
They
Huge.
were, I guess, 750 watts, and then the on-stage lights were 8-inch Fresnels. They were by strand, so at least they were that.
Yeah.
And that's where it all started.
That
And
was
then
pretty cutting edge at that time, though,
it
probably, I
was,
guess,
it
right?
was.
Yeah.
Another fun fact, it was somebody was lowering the 12 by 12 ellipsoidal down to me from the loading rail up above, and the knot slipped. And so what did I do? I caught it.
How'd
Why
that
my
feel?
hand didn't go through the lens? I grabbed the yoke, I grabbed the lens, and I just bounced it down.
Oh my goodness.
That's where I almost
What did
got
that
killed.
thing weigh?
Oh God, I can't even imagine. It had to be 50 pounds or something like that. I
Jesus.
mean, it was, it was as big as a torpedo and certainly looked like one.
Yeah. Did you
Anyway,
did you pull anything catching it?
no, actually,
That's a big
I'm,
catch.
I
That's
was a
like
big
catching
catch.
your teenage son diving off the roof of the house or
It-
something, you know?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, except more clumsy.
But not thinking and wanting to get the lamp fixture because we only had like 12 by
Yeah.
12s. But at any rate, fortunately, in my college, we had a very active dance program. In the summer, they transported a bunch of New York City dance companies. So Daniel Negrin, Kay Takai, Mal Pate, several others came up from New York in the summer, and I got to work with them
Hmm,
as the lighting guy.
interesting.
And that was kind of a uh, interesting moment in time. I had discovered red, blue, and green front light and how cool that was. And some of them thought that was brilliant, and some of them thought that's terrible. I can't see their faces. I'm like, oh, I'll just make it brighter, and that, of course, made them just pinker. Um, but at any rate, it did that, and then I rolled around Vermont for many years as a lighting designer, mostly for dance. And ended up being a big fish in a small pond. But I did a bunch of dance companies in Vermont. And then in 1980, I left. I went into industrial sales, totally unrelated industry. Did that for a while, and then
Just needed to make some money for a minute.
yes, well, exactly right. I wanted to
Yeah.
have a family, and
Yeah.
I was starving artist in Vermont, and so we moved down to Maryland. And while here, a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to do an industrial for Avon. And I said, sure. And I was in DC, and I went down and I hung lights and focus lights. And it was like putting on your favorite flannel shirt. It was like, this is exactly how it should feel.
Yeah.
And so I then went into how can I get back into this? Ended up working at a local community college in technical theater as the TD. Hit the glass ceiling there, went to University of Maryland, got a mythical fine arts degree in lighting design, rolled around Washington, D.C., doing all kinds of lighting for you name it. That's where I ended up working with Hal Binkley, which was
Oh wow, yeah. Yeah, I
a
saw that
gas
in
in
your
and of
notes.
itself. Yeah, he was a monster. This is the early Hal Binkley.
Yeah.
So I was in graduate school, and he was doing the Much Ado About Nothing, which was the Shakespeare Theater Company's grand opening at the Landsberg Theater. So this was their inaugural production,
And
and
he
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 lit.
wasn't famous yet though, right? Like he did you know who he was?
Uh,
prior to working with him?
I knew he was a Broadway designer, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah. I think shortly thereafter he did Kiss of the Spider Woman.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know. I didn't watch the metrics of his career to see how it grew, but I do know he was a hotshot.
yeah,
And he
yeah,
made that known.
yeah.
I mean, he literally came in just from some theater and just barely made it to the Focus. And I was his assistant, and that's where the reality hit the fan because I don't know how many lights he had in the air. He had a bazillion. He had every freaking light that they had bought, every freaking dimmer that was on. This is back in the incandescent land, obviously.
Yeah.
And I was running the plot for him during Focus, and he could focus a light faster than I could blink. And he was just like, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. I had 4 electricians working simultaneously in various parts of the theater. And he was just booking it, and that some of them had already worked with him, so they knew what it was up against.
Yeah.
Marcel, I literally was an information overload. I was like, I just went tilt.
Wow.
I just
Yeah.
like,
Well, did you carry anything out of that though?
um, yes, actually working with Mr. Binkley, he taught me how to look.
Yeah.
He taught me go to the theater, don't look at how they do it. Don't just absorb what the lighting designer's doing. Don't put your head on the swivel and try to figure it out while you're looking at it. Which was a great lesson when the first time I went on Cirque du Soleil show. Because you're like, how the fuck? And focus.
Yeah.
Again, that was first experience with them was in Mystere, and I was down close, and it was a USITT, and we had tickets that were down close, and I was watching this show as I was instructed to do so, and I was in information overload between the audio and the visual and the costumes and the lighting and everything. I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's
It
a
was a
lot to
lot.
take in. Yeah.
It was a lot to take in. But at any rate, no, I survived. Every so often I would see him at a trade show and say, "Hey, Hal, how are you?" And he'd go, "You the guy?" And I was like, "Yep, that was me."
You never worked with him again after that?
No,
Oh.
well, I stayed
So you made quite an
local.
impression, Bill.
I think there were people lining up to work with Mr.
Oh, of
Binkley,
course, yeah.
and
Hal's
I
had a
was
great
not,
career.
and I was somewhat geographically constricted because at that point I was the estranged parent from my children, so I didn't want to go all over the world and follow him around, and
Yeah.
I wasn't going to go to New York City,
Yeah.
so
I get it.
so I stayed local, and eventually I ended up working for Barbizon, and that was because, again, paying the bills. I was a freelance, have gun will hire. I worked as TD at Source Theater, at the Landsberg, at Studio Theater, Arena, you name it. I was a hired gun. I was doing all right, but again, the bills were mounting, and
Yeah, the
creditors were
allure
getting
of a
grumpy.
the allure of a steady paycheck can
I
be
know.
quite strong.
Well,
Yeah.
and so Barbizon called, and the guy who I ended up replacing was moving to Charlotte. And I said, okay. And so I started working for Barbizon for 5-digit salary. It was my 25,000 or something big like that. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
that's cool. That's a regular paycheck. And I did that for a while, and then I got tired of commuting from where I live in Havre to Alexandria, Virginia, which is 89 miles one way. And I found a job working for Bill Furman, who was doing electrical controls. Not the guys out in Seattle, but at any rate, he was a local dimming manufacturer. He had red dimmer packs. That's all I can remember.
Yeah.
And he was offering me big bucks, and I could stay here, and I could work from home, and so forth and so
And
on.
be what, a sales guy? Sales rep?
And be a sales guy, because I had a track record sort of with Barbizon at this point. And so I went in to quit, and I called Steve Cullifer, and my general manager wasn't there, so I spoke to Steve, and I said, I love you guys, but I'm going to leave. He said, well, I wish you well. Do you mind if I call Jonathan? And I said, no, go ahead. Marcel has God as my witness. I hung up the phone, and it went ring, ring, and I picked it up, and it was Jonathan.
Yeah. You're not going anywhere.
Where do you think you're going? Well, I, I don't have to go to Alexandria every week. Work from home, but I don't have a computer. Buy a computer. Well, it's more money. How much? Okay.
Yeah.
And I was so flabbergasted by this man
Yeah.
that I said, okay.
Yeah.
And then 23 years later.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously he saw something in you, which is an incredible talent for any CEO or founder or entrepreneur, is to, it's one of the most important talents, is finding people, finding the right people that are going to make a difference in your business, and then keeping those people.
Yep.
And so he did a great job of doing that, obviously, checking the boxes that were, problems for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the strength that he had for sure. He was, as I call it, a humanitarian. He understood people. He knew people. He knew what helped them. He was always helping people. To a fault, he would help people.
Yep.
I saw many an employee being in a very difficult situation where most might have let him go, and he was like, "No, what do you need? Here's some more money. You need take time off. Take whatever you need."
Yeah.
I mean, he was just an amazing man in that regard.
Yeah. I miss that dude. Like I said to you earlier, I really miss him.
Oh, yeah.
I always enjoyed talking to him. I would hang up on anyone to take Jonathan's call anytime. And, a lot of those problems, like where you said he was solving problems for people and helping them and stuff, like we'd talk about some of those things.
Yeah.
And, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And, I come from Canada, so I think, at heart, I'm a pretty liberal person, and I like to help people. I don't like people to be going through tough times and stuff. So I tend to give more than I can sometimes. And I think Jonathan was similar.
Yes.
So yeah. So I mean, you had a 23 year career with them.
Yeah, and
that's wild.
And leaving Barbizon was one of the most difficult things I think I've ever done in my career, for sure. I just kind of reached the point at which I could not function effectively for them. And I just decided to move on. I wasn't looking, the proverbial wasn't looking, but I was a guy locally, and I got the phone call from Tom Kennedy, who was looking for a person for Act 3, which is a ETC rep. And I said, well, there's this person and that person. And I said, well, how much are you offering? And it was an interesting number. And I said, well, how much vacation time do you give?
Yeah.
And he said, take whatever you need. And I was like, well,
wow,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And Barbizon, I capped out at like 3 weeks. I think it's much more liberal than that now, maybe. Not. But I capped out at 3 weeks, like a decade earlier.
Yeah.
And so we kept talking, and you can be a partner, and blah 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 blah, and make it rain. And so I went to work for Act 3, and it was a tough call. It was a really tough call. I think we both cried like babies. But,
Jonathan.
Yeah.
He tried to talk you out of it again.
Oh yeah. What can I do? Why didn't you come to me first? So it's always what he says first.
Yeah.
Why didn't you come to me first?
Yeah.
Just some underlying things that just couldn't, and if I had dwelled on the vacation thing long enough, he would have like, I think he actually did. He said, well, take more time. I don't care. You can take whatever you need.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then, unfortunately, it was shortly thereafter that he passed. And so I felt even worse.
Yeah. Well, and, I can understand the allure of being a rep when you're in that situation too, because especially the ETC rep, like I hate to say it, but how hard could that be? You're selling crack to a crack addict, basically, right? And and I know I'm downplaying how complicated it is. You need to know a lot about systems,
No, absolutely. And I could put it all together for whomever it was. But I remember one thing when I went to an ETC workshop one day, one summer. It's like all the reps went in one room, and all the dealers went into another room.
Yeah.
And all the dealers were having a conversation about isn't it pretty to do this, that, and the other thing? While the real conversation about the industry was happening over there.
Yeah,
And I kind of felt like, so we're in the kids' table while the reps are having dinner with the adults.
that's
And not
funny.
that that
Funny but true.
was
Yeah,
not that that was really what I'm thinking as I'm departing
yeah,
Barbizon, but it was another challenge.
yeah.
And so I did the rep thing for 5 years, I guess it was.
Yeah.
And then I left Act 3 in December of the 23 on the 31st. And I had been working with Polysonics, a theatrical audio visual consultancy, providing them light plots, basically.
Okay.
And I said to the owner, who I had a lot of respect for, hey, if you want me to help you with this after I retire, I'd be glad to. The Wednesday before I was retiring from Barbizon, I got a call from the guy I'd been working with at that company who said that he was leaving. On the Monday after I retired, I got the phone call. Hey, you know that thing that you were going to do for me? Yeah. Can you come do that now?
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And so I'm having my second retirement the end of this month, 31st of January.
What, you're stopping again?
I'm stopping again, and I'm putting it down. I went to LDI. I woke up at LDI this past
People who
year.
are retiring don't go to LDI. I'm just letting you know, like
I went to LDI.
that's a sign.
I went to LDI, and I woke up the first morning of the show going, what the am I doing here?
Yeah.
And I went, you're going to look at these toys, these great things. You can't do anything. You're not going to sell any of these. You're not going to use any of these. I mean, these are your friends. And so as I'm walking around the show, they were like, I thought you retired. And I said, yeah, I did for about a year, and now I'm going to really retire. So what was I doing at LDI? As I told everybody, I'm looking for my replacement. And so I had some meaningful conversations, but, it's difficult to find somebody who has the wealth of knowledge, for lack of a better word,
It's
that
true.
I do.
No,
Yeah.
that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. I mean, you can find people who know a lot about fixtures or know a lot about, design software but they don't know how to catch a light when it falls out of the sky or,
Sure.
they haven't bumped their head enough times to really understand what happens when shit goes south,
Yep.
and you
No,
need to know those things. Like
you're
that's the
right.
real world experience that you don't get from a book and you don't get from, whatever it is. Like,
So I turned 70 while at LDI,
yeah.
and I was like, that clock's ticking, and I really would like to do some other things.
Like
I mean,
what? Reading on
well,
your front porch?
yes.
I'm telling you, somebody's going to call you. The right person is going to call you and say, Bill, look, you can work from home. You can have 12 weeks of vacation. I only want you to work 3-hour days, and I only want you to do this. And, you can do it whenever you want in your pajamas, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to go, damn, that sounds good.
So Tom Stanziano, bastard that he is, while at LDI, I said, I'm looking for my replacement. And he said, okay, I'll think about it. Hey, I got this thing that we're doing at Verilight. And I wonder if you would be interested in this, blah, 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 blah.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. You know
But,
what? You've done too good of a job. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the thing. Like when you're when you're me, when you're like, there's 100 people that I can think of in the industry that are, ultimately employable. They'll never be broke or without work or without customers or whatever. And that's not a bad thing, And by the way, what we do can be quite fun and rewarding as long as you're doing the things that you love to do and
Right.
you're able to get rid of some of the things you don't love to do. And so, any role that you find yourself falling into, if you do, make sure they hand you an assistant who
Right.
will take all of the stuff that you don't like to do, because I'm not going to do anything anymore. I'm 70 years old. I'm not going to do anything I don't want to do.
Yep.
And I want to take as much vacation as I want. That might be 4 weeks one year. It might be 22 weeks the next year. I don't have any idea, but I'll work when I work. And if you're okay with that, great. Let's do something.
Well, I'm going to go on record because I know this is being recorded as I'm retiring.
That's funny. He's even got the bell to make it
So
real.
I forgot this from the very beginning. I got this. I don't know when, and I don't know how. I was for some birthday at some point.
Old geezer. There you go. A
It's an old
mandel.
geezer candle.
Mandel.
I'm gonna light it just to
Oh,
prove
there
the
you
point.
go. There you go.
Probably
Look at
smells
this.
like ass, but I'm gonna light it anyway.
Well, all old geezers smell like ass. So,
Yeah, well, that's probably why it smells like that.
yeah, exactly. That's awesome. An old geezer candle. I'm going to have to find those. I'll have to buy a couple
I'm
hundred of
telling you,
them.
this should be the parting gift. Thank you very much for being on
Yeah,
my show.
there you
Here's the
go.
old geezer candle. I'll send you the technical as to where it came from.
Perfect. Perfect. I love it already.
It's a mandel,
Yeah, it's a
as in a
mandel, not a
candle, but
candle.
it's a mandel.
Yeah. So I read here somewhere that you were the senior warden for a church.
Oh wow.
What is a senior warden for a church, and what does that person do?
Well, I'll tell you, as a senior warden, no,
Sounds like a geezer kind of role.
it does. It
Yeah.
does. So I am a practicing Episcopalian. I'm
Okay.
actually what's called a cradle Episcopalian, meaning I was born, baptized, and have been an Episcopalian my entire life.
Okay.
And I appreciate the faith because they are one of the major uh, organized religious organizations, that's redundant, but that accepts everybody. I mean, everybody. Women can be priests, you can be gay, black, Hispanic, doesn't matter where you come from. It's all done in the cradle of love and God's world.
Yeah.
So several years ago, we had a minister, and his name is James Snodgrass, and he was looking for a senior warden. A senior warden is the lay person, which is to say Joe Blow, member of the congregation, not a religious figure, um, who does the business of the church. It would be kind of like the minister is the CEO, and the senior warden is the CFO.
Okay.
That would be the best analogy I can give
Yep.
you. And so he came to me with his big brown eyes, and he said, "Bill, would you consider being senior warden?"
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not really religious. I know the Bible is. I have one or maybe two in the house, but I'm not that guy.
Yeah. I curse occasionally.
Bill,
I'm in the lighting business.
Bill, pray on this for me.
Yeah.
And so I
There you
eventually
are.
said yes. And
Yeah.
and actually, all kidding aside, the church has a feeding program and had a kitchen about that big. And we raised almost $500,000
Jeez, real
to
money.
renovate the church, renovate the kitchen, blow out the back of the kitchen, the existing kitchen, double its expanse, and did some other renovations throughout the parish hall, which is where the kitchen is, and the church itself. The church is one of the oldest churches in Havre, which is where I live. It was built in 1809, and it was sacked and burned by the British.
So that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Was the money raised from individuals or corporations or a combination of everything? Or
A lot of it came from the congregation.
uh-huh.
There was some funds that were available publicly. And there's a family, the Wetter family, that were very supportive of the church.
Mhm.
Virginia Wetter was one of the pioneers in radio.
Okay.
If you look her up, she's got a whole thing and has won many an award for being a woman in the broadcast industry when women were not in the broadcast industry.
Interesting.
And so the family's been very supportive of the church for all these years. So they were major contributors, Virginia being one of them, and her daughters. And so between them and the congregation, we raised pretty close to $500,000.
That's amazing. That's
and
really
it's a
impressive.
small congregation.
Yeah.
So I was project manager of the build, which was again pretty
wow.
extensive.
Right up your alley. Yeah.
Yep. Project manager for the renovation of the church. Project manager for the renovation of the belfry. because we had belfry. I was just waiting for that tug on the rope and the bell to go bang.
Yeah, right. Yep, the bell's free. I can
Yeah.
confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I did that for 6 years actually.
Wow. That had to be
And
rewarding.
yeah, it was. It was a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
And then I actually couldn't continue. I had reached the limit of my term of office, if you will.
Term limits. What a concept.
Term limits. Yeah.
What
I
a
could only do it
concept.
2-3 year consecutive years. I had to take a breather. I guess
So
I
is
could
it an
come back,
elected position, or is it just a position that you're handed?
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I mean, there isn't like a million people lining up to want to be the senior warden
Right.
of the church.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Doesn't
you want
pay
to
very well.
Do you want to do it? Because I'm not.
Yeah. Let's
you
get
know.
Bill to do it. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you are still elected by the congregation to do this.
Yeah.
But, it wasn't like I had to do any campaign speeches or anything
Yeah.
like that.
So tell me, again, I'm a Canadian, so pardon me, but Havre de Grace.
Yeah.
Tell me about this town. It's obviously in Maryland, but
True enough.
it's an interesting name.
Yeah.
I'm guessing there's some sort of a Spanish history or something to it.
Oh, no, it's Marquis de Lafayette.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you have to do that every time you say it?
Absolutely.
That's funny.
Either that or Italian.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
Yes, so Marquis de Lafayette, during the Revolutionary War, passed through town. Him and George were tipping a few across the river. And he said, this is a beautiful town. It had originally been called Harmerstown. That doesn't have a ring to it.
Yeah, it sounds much better now.
But Havre de Grace is where the Susquehanna River meets the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay.
Literally, the Susquehanna River empties right into the bay, right at Havre de Grace.
Sounds
so in
beautiful.
that little chunk of the world, Havre de Grace was a fairly significant town for merchandise going up into Pennsylvania. It had an entire lock system that went up the Susquehanna River, taking goods, canned goods, etc., into Pennsylvania. It was also a significant port up from Baltimore to get goods in this area. And because it was on the Chesapeake Bay, that's where Admiral Coburn decided to drop anchor and bomb the hell out of Havre de Grace in the War of 1812. So
Awesome.
in 1813, Havre de Grace was sacked and burned, and still to this day becomes one of the few cities in the country that was sacked and burned by a foreign power.
Wow.
So there.
That's interesting. So how big is this city?
About 12,000.
Oh, okay. So it's tiny.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Yeah.
It's a small, fairly close-knit community. That many people around, you get to know people who get to know you, who get to know people. I mean, I'm always surprised at who knows who sometimes.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, we did I built a solarium on the backside of my house, and we had a Cinco de Mayo party last May, and invited a whole bunch of people because everybody would see on Facebook because I posted some pictures.
So if you didn't invite them,
what
you
are
were
you
in
doing?
trouble.
What are you building? What are you building? What is it going to be?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I just said, come look.
Yeah.
And what was really neat about it was I have an association with a lot of people who don't have associations among themselves, but it became one of those, oh, you taught my son back in blah, blah, blah.
Oh, funny.
Oh,
yeah.
You live in the such and such house? Oh, yeah. And, oh, I used to work for blah. And it just, like, all these little connections were being made. It was
That's cool.
Really quite unique. And that's classic Havre de Grace.
And you've been there a long time, right?
About 25 years.
Oh,
When
that's
Jonathan, back to Jonathan. When Jonathan said, go work from home, then I could do that. And that's 95,
that's where you
96,
chose
whatever.
to live.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I fell in love, blah, blah, blah. Married the woman who...
That's where she chose
married the
to
woman
live.
who... Yeah. Married the woman who owns the house,
Ah,
I
well, that's a
wouldn't
good
say
idea.
kept man, but
I'd like to say that's cheaper than buying the house, but I know differently.
oh, over the long run, no,
Yeah. Well,
no,
it's funny you were
it's not
telling
cheap.
this story about your party and running into all these people who are like, "Oh, well, I know so and so." And so I have a house in a town similar size in Canada called Canmore, which is if you fly into Calgary, it's about an hour and a half outside of Calgary in the Rocky Mountains, and it's right next to
Mhm,
Banff, which a lot of people have heard of.
mhm.
And so, this house I have in Canmore, I have a friend there named Kyle. And every time he got in a problem with his wife and eventually got divorced with his wife, he would call me and say, can I stay in the doghouse? Because I'm down here in South Florida. My house is empty up in Canada. And I'd be like, yeah, you can stay there. So every time I was there and like I'd go to a bar with people or to a party or to someone's house for a dinner party or something, they'd always come up and go, "Here, Marcel, I've been in your house." Because this Kyle guy was always having parties in my house when I
Oh,
wasn't there, right?
great.
So yeah, that's what your story reminded me
Very
of.
strange. Well,
Yeah,
and so that segues into the opera house in town.
yeah.
We had an opera house built in 1890, I think it was. Um, it was a three-story structure. The There's some controversy as to what was where, but it definitely was on the second floor of the building, and it had an entire fly system in it,
Oh,
and it sat like 500 people. And the first floor was used as it's been a gym, it's been city council chambers, et cetera, et cetera. In the 1900s, the third floor burnt.
oh,
I, knowing what a theater should look like, noticed that the section that would have been like the fly tower on the back side of the building is no longer there.
hmm,
So I assume that the fire was in the fly tower, and that was ultimately removed from the building. But 8 years ago, actually longer than that, the city said, "What are we going to do with this building called the Opera House?" It had been currently being run pretty much by a local community theater, and the city had storage in it and blah 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 blah. And so they put together a little task force, and I was like, "Yeah, I know a little bit about theater." And they said, "Okay, you're on the task force," and along with several other people in the city, decided to renovate it. And the city put forth a bond. The citizens of Havre said, "Yes, we want the opera house," and spent about $3 million renovating this building. So
hmm.
now the theater's on the second floor, ground
Wow.
proper. It now seats 201 seats on a raked, actually stepped up seating arrangement. The theater was literally gutted to nothing. It is punched through into the next door building, which was the firehouse. So now there's a ballroom, conference room, whatever you want, a multi-purpose room that you can get to from the opera house into the firehouse. And the theater has been running ever since. And that's why I started the Arts Collective. See how that was segued right into here?
Yeah, I like it.
Um, so knowing that the city really didn't know what they were going to do with the space and really think, "Oh, well, we'll have a professional company come in and manage it." And I was like, "Not for 201 seats, they're not."
Yeah.
And started the Arts Collective as a way in which to program the Opera House.
Oh, interesting.
So
So how many
that
people
then,
are involved in that in the collective?
uh, at the time, there was a board of 10 and a full-time person of one, which ended up being one and a half. And then everybody was hired in, the talent was hired in, etc. Um,
Did anyone other than you know what they were doing
so when I
or have a
started,
background, I should say, have a
well,
background in theater or opera or music or
so when I started it, I went around and I cherry picked people from the community who were a representative of the various disciplines within the performing arts.
oh,
I had an opera singer, I had a film guy, I had a theater goof, I
wow.
had a
In a
dance
city of
person.
12,000 people.
There's at least 10.
Huh. Yeah, cool.
And so they were the people who brought it to life by contacting so and so about doing a performance of dance. Or I had a guy who was from New York who brought his knowledge of film and ran a film festival, and he was extremely knowledgeable. And my wife, who was a thespian and knew theater people, booked children's shows and so forth and so on. And we had a pretty good run. The thing was that it got piled onto by the city. They were like, well, would you mind managing the Opera House too? Because there were already existing several theater companies, dance companies, the high school, whatever. It was the only performing arts space in Havre de Grace. Notice I said was, not. But, and they said, well, how about if we give you a bag of money? And I was like, a bag of money? And with that bag of money, I thought I could hire an executive director. And I did. And she came on board and was great at creating an audience experience for the Opera House for Havre de Grace.
That makes sense.
And so we were doing that for, I don't know, 6-7 years. And then eventually what happened was the city got hold of another space, which is called the Star Center, which is a 900-seat theater.
Whoa.
Just down the road a bit from where I live. And because the Opera House was also a city property, they hired staff to do the Star Center, and that staff is also responsible for the Opera House. So the Arts Collective was no longer necessary to run the Opera House. We left and we started a gallery in town, and that's where it is today. And it's just also a small performance venue.
And but so since those venues, though, are still operational, working out well.
Yeah, and there's another one. So we have we have a 500-seat theater.
Sounds like a very artsy little town.
It is. Well, it's where I call it's where all the cool kids hang out, because it is very artsy.
Yeah,
we have 3 performance venues. They do any number of things. A lot of cover bands, which I'm not thrilled with, but they, are looking at other things.
Yeah.
There's some traveling shows and various types coming in now, also like a Cirque du Soleil-esque came in, Vampire Circus or something like that.
Well, a 900-seat venue, a lot of different things could work,
Yes, it could. And I look forward to them making that happen.
Yeah. Even the 200-seat venue, like you would think some of the smaller comedy acts and things like that could do real well. And
the problem is right now, as I said, there's several community theater organizations in this area, and they consume a lot of the schedule between the one resident and one sort of a kissing cousin, if you will, to the other theater company. And then there's a dance company in the local town. There's not a lot of, a lot. There are no publicly owned performing arts spaces in this county.
Huh.
And so it was like bees to honey. There was like, oh, there's a theater over there. I can rent that. And so here they came.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Yep.
That's really, really cool. I like it.
And now there's another one. There's the 500, which is currently 3, which is soon to be 5, is a state theater. And that's privately owned. And they do a whole cavalcade of activities. Again, a lot of cover bands that pay the bills. But they do wrestling. They do... Wow. I know, it's wild. They do other kind of shows. They drag brunches, all kinds of wacky stuff. So
fun.
And we also have 2 museums in town. So it's not just that.
There's lots of stuff to do.
Excuse me, 3 museums. It's where the cool kids hang out.
I like it. I like it.
Buy another pad here that you can...
Yeah. Well, there's a really good chance that that's never going to happen, but I would like to stop in if I'm ever in the area.
Absolutely.
I'd like to stop in to Havre de Grace. Sounds like a cool town for sure.
On your way north, south. No, you come this way.
North, yeah. So the older I get, the more I really love small towns. I don't jive on living in the big cities anymore as much as I used to. Yep. And I think I was always kind of a small town guy that just happened to live in bigger cities. But I really like the small community vibe and being able to walk from one end of Main Street to the other end in, a half hour or something or less. And yeah, I love that stuff. I
Yeah,
like.
the Opera House is a whopping 10-minute walk. There are restaurants, at least half a dozen of them within a 10-minute walk.
That's awesome.
So
It's
yeah,
perfect.
I get where you're coming from, and I really appreciate it. I love going to New York City and seeing a big time show,
Yeah.
and I love coming home. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Good for you. And your wife, I think you said she's Greek, but is she from that area?
she's not from Greece. Her
No, I mean
parents.
from the Havre de Grace area.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, she's the woman I married who had the house, by the way.
Right.
She's actually a Baltimorean
Okay.
and moved here with her first husband, who was Greek.
Yeah.
Kicked him out. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding, Chris. And yeah, so she got divorced. We got connected in theater. Blah blah blah.
Wow.
30 years later, whatever
That's
it's been.
cool. Well,
Yeah,
congratulations. You
yeah,
survived.
yeah.
Yeah.
Greek people are an interesting group of people.
Yeah. I don't know that many, to be perfectly honest. I have two. Well, I have one employee who lives in Greece and one employee who is Greek and lives on the mainland of Greece. But, I don't know a lot of Greek people, to be perfectly honest. I love the
You don't
food.
you don't think you do.
Yeah,
Just
that's
have to
true.
be careful.
That's
Just be
true.
careful.
Yeah.
If you're looking for somebody to go have a party with, find a Greek person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had my first wife had 7 kids in her family, I guess. So a lot of brothers.
Yeah.
My wife has two. One is your classic playboy, never gonna grow up Greek
Yeah.
guy. I don't know how many marriages he's been through, but
Yeah.
if you want to have a party, he's the guy you want to invite.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, I know I've
so,
been to enough Greek restaurants to know that they like to have a good time.
Opa,
Yeah, they definitely love to have a good time, and
absolutely.
I like it. I like, you know, I mean, as you know, Sarah, our producer, is always putting up videos and stuff of her, running around the island, and it's in the summer. It's just like constantly get-togethers, like.
Yeah.
Everyone's always together. It's such a community and it's so
Yep.
social. I love it. I mean, it's so good for your health and longevity too.
Yep.
Not all
Yep.
the drinking, of course, but
No.
everything, the rest of it is so good for you. Like I've studied the blue zones. I don't know if you've ever looked at any of that stuff.
Oh, yeah, I know of it. I haven't
Yeah.
looked at
And
relocating, but yeah.
the whole blue zone concept really is down to those social connections and having a very successful and very busy social life, having
Yep.
a lot of talking conversations with people in
Yep.
person.
Yep.
But it's also like the food. Like one guy will have goats, one person will have a vineyard, one person will have, and they just kind of get together and okay, you got the tomatoes, you got the olive oil, you've got the
Hmm.
lamb, and that's how they eat. And so it's all so healthy. Like it's not this factory crap food that we eat and stuff.
Right. Exactly.
So
Well,
yeah.
and that sense of community that you talk about from a small town,
Mm,
that seems to be innate within those people, within the
yeah.
Greek people.
I love that.
The sense of familia is just very strong, and so we have our neighbors. One's from Honduras and the other's from Mexico, and they're very gracious people. She raises chickens, so we get chicken eggs
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
that's what I really appreciate about living in this community. I
I
know a
like
lot
that
of
stuff.
people, and there's a lot of connections here to be made.
Yeah. Yeah, my brother lives in Prince Edward Island in Canada, in a very small town in Prince Edward Island. And it's like that there. Like one guy grows potatoes on his land, another person grows something else on their land. One guy's the lobster fisherman who's the very popular friend that everybody likes. And, it's just constantly swapping food. Like everybody's, got a role to play and they all just kind of, it moves around and everyone eats, you know.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
it's a great way to be. I love that community stuff. And in cities, it's just like it just feels like you're just constantly trying to survive as opposed to,
I go to New
living.
York City and my back hairs immediately go up.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
it's
me
just
too.
like, okay, I'm on, I'm
Me
switched
too.
on, I'm ready, I'm action.
Yeah, me too.
Which I know there are a lot of people who live that way. John Gebby,
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah,
hey,
absolutely.
Marcel. Hey,
Yeah,
what's going on? Hey,
yeah.
Mark.
How you doing?
Hey, over here.
How you doing? Yeah,
you love that man.
yeah, yeah. Well, Bill, it's been great. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's, again, you're one of those guys that I've always known your name. I'm sure we've met at some point in Barbizon because
Probably.
Resnick could walk me around and go, this is this person, this is this person, this is.
Right.
But I didn't often do business with people myself at
Right.
Barbizon outside of Resnick.
Right.
It was usually me and Jonathan dreaming up something and then handing it to everyone else to try and clean up our mess. And but I
Yes,
appreciate you taking the
truly.
time to do it. And if you really do retire, I wish you well in your retirement. But otherwise, I'll send you some leads for some cool gigs that are kind of part time and have lots of vacation time and allow you to work.
I'm
from
gonna
home.
retire. I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna retire.
retire.
I'm gonna retire. I'm
Yeah.
gonna retire. I'm gonna retire.
Well, we did record it, so it's official.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, Bill. Thank you.
You bet.
Have a good
Be
one.
well.
Yeah, you too.